Hello everyone, Lisa here, thanks for joining me. Last week, if you had a look at it, you can see the little house that I painted, brick house, and during our plein air class this week I did a bit of a demo on brickwork, and also I did cover a little bit of brickwork when I did the chisel brush type video. So just in keeping with that, I thought there are a few different ways to do bricks, and I thought I'd take you through the ways that I do it, the easy way and then the really full-on way, so that you have that ability to have a practice and try this out in different techniques. Let's get started. I'm just today using some different colours from different paint companies. I will use the Sennelier Burnt Sienna and their brown, and to that I'm just going to add a little bit of permanent mauve. So that's actually a real purple colour, permanent mauve, lovely. I call it a neutral purple, not too pink, not too blue. And then I may add some permanent rose, which is Dale Rowney as well, which is more of a magenta pink colour. So I'm going to start off with wetting an area first. This is the easiest and most minimal technique, and that is wet on wet. So here I go, starting just a little section, and I'm just going to get a bigger brush, chisel brush, and I'm just going to actually wet that area with quite wet paint. So it should move on the paper, that's the tip, you know you've got it wet enough. And I'm laying that down as a base. So I want to allow that to settle a little bit before I start doing anything else. Let's talk about now brush choice. If you want to do a really formal brick shape, you would use a chisel brush, which is what I talked about in my previous video. But a chisel is already in the shape of a brick, so that as you work, or even as you, if you look here, if you take the colour out to give highlights, now this is too wet, so that's going to be really soft, but it is a good way to work with brickwork. So this is a technique that as I go, I need to work as it's drying. So I'm going to go back in with my Sennelier Burnt Sienna, but I'm not using the really runny mix now, I'm using a much drier mix. And I'm just going to add little shapes of that around. Oopsie. And I'm not looking at doing individual bricks, but rather clusters of bricks. This is a faster, easier way to indicate to the brain that it's brick. So this works mainly when you're doing a wet on wet, because everything's softened. So you don't have to worry about it being really specific when it's softened like that. I'm going to add a little bit of permanent mauve to this colour. And what that does, this purple colour, it deepens the tone, so it makes it darker, and it gives it a slightly stronger, more heavy burnt sienna, red oxide, going into sort of a red oxide colour. And again, leaving gaps, be prepared to improve your judgment of your gap leaving. The more you do this, the better you'll be at leaving gaps. And I'm really happy with how that's going. If it's too wet, you'll see this is happening, and there's no form there at all. But if you're trying to capture older buildings, that's perfect. And I would even say go so far as to get like a darker brown, put some strange little dots and dashes and marks in there, because that adds to the character and the age of the brickwork. So it's up to you how you build it up, but that's basically all there is to that first technique. Wet on wet, really runny colour added, then watch the paper as it's drying. You're adding stronger and slightly varied colours. Let's go into our second technique. I'm wetting the page, but I'm not going to jump into it straight away. In the meantime, and that's not as wet as the first one, in the meantime I'm going to mix a few colours and have them prepared. First one is, I'll use my burnt sienna here, my primary burnt sienna. I'll add a bit of brown to it, a specific darker brick. I'll go back to my burnt sienna. I'm going to darken it anyway, but there was a bit of brown on that. I'm going to go to my permanent mauve and get quite a nice darker brick happening. And if you have a variation in a brick you like, you want to add some blue, you know, be prepared to just add that colour in. So here I might add a little bit of, say, French ultramarine blue, French ultramarine, and that's going to give me a murkier colour because the blue and the orange in the burnt sienna are opposites, so it's going to grey that colour down a bit. So you could add yellow ochre, you know, to make a lighter, yellower brick, and when you're experimenting it's quite a good thing to do, just think of all these different colours. So now I'm going to do one where I might not have the right brush, I might not have a chisel brush handy. This is damp, I wouldn't call it wet, actually there's one little bit of wet there. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this brush up and I'm just going to do as best a brick shape as I can. But here I'm concentrating more in a horizontal way because my brush doesn't give me that perfect brick shape. I need to create some sort of horizontal patterning so that my brain goes, oh, that's layers of brickwork. And this actually helps us get away with not doing every brick either. You can see these individual shapes, they're not perfectly brick shaped, but because we have a few pretty good ones within that mix, the brain is like, oh, I understand that's brick. So let me put some of these duller ones in now. Sorry, someone's just started using a leaf blower. Sorry. And make the effort to try and slide your brush, this is a round, slide the brush across and put some weight on the bristles so that it does form a brick shape, just to give yourself that ability to do all the others in a more random way. And then I'll go to my darker brick. You don't even have to have a lot of colours, you know, it's quite easy just to do it with the one colour and then the different tones, which means you'd have more water for a lighter tone and far less water for a deeper tone. Now I might leave it at that so you can see the character that's coming through. And the third technique is literally going back to your chisel brush. Now I'm going to get a slightly bigger one so you can see the specifics. Actually, that's a good one. So this one's a bit double the width of the first one I used. Now we don't start with a wet page for this technique. We load the brush up with colour. We hold the brush as vertically as possible and it's really just swiping. Adding a different colour. You can add a little bit or a lot, muck around with it. Sorry, my hand's a bit wobbly. Now, with this technique, you get to sort of just keep adding brick by brick, leaving gaps for the mortar, or the grout, mortar I think, but also you can work those bricks over if you want. So if you want to connect some, you can. You want to put darker little spots in, you know, you can add character to these bricks really, really easily. And I'm doing that while this paint is drying. So it does soften a little bit. With this technique, I'll just go a little bit more with it. Obviously I've painted bricks before, so I know the patterning that I'm doing, but if you're really unsure, just look at examples of actual bricks and you can see they're either stepped or they're aligned. So half a brick sits on a full one or they're all lined up. If you want to have specific mortar colour, then, and you haven't left white, then I would suggest using a white pen, or in this case a black pen. I'm just going to line it in. I've got a medium here, and it just gives you that formality so that if you're a little off in your gaps or you haven't left gaps, this is going to help you. And see how it's better, because it's brickwork, it's better not to have a really good pen. This is an older pen, but if you have really strong lines that are really neat, your brickwork's going to look stiffer. Now, that might be what you're going for. That's fine. And you don't even have to do all the lines all the way through, actually. So there are three very different ways to do bricks, but I hope that helps you make up your mind of how you might want to do them. And you can continue to add over the top of all of these. So, you know, I could do a big wash over this and change the whole tone of the brickwork if I wanted to, taking out a lot of the light areas. Or if I had brick, you know, and I wanted to tinge it a bit, then I could come back in with a bluey grey colour. So there's a lot of work that can be added in once the brickwork has been established in your brain. It's spawned, yes, that's successful, I see that's brickwork. You could even do some brush ruling and line in some brick lines here like this. And same with this, I could formalise this with lines now with my paint colour, or even with a black pen, and I could go over the top. Anyway, I hope that helps you, and I hope you have a lovely week and that you get to be creative. Thanks everyone, bye.